Shalom, I'm Rabbi Michael Panitz. I'm the Rabbi of Temple Israel of Norfolk, Virginia, and I have the honor to be speaking to you from the pulpit of our congregation. My message at this time is entitled Replacement Theory, New Name, Same Old Gas. When I was a teenager, the Standard Oil Corporation of New Jersey bought Humble Oil and changed its product name from Esso to Exxon. An advertising campaign of that era sought to assure customers continuity of satisfaction from the renamed product. The tagline was, "New name, same old gas." At that time, Richard Nixon was president. My older brother was not a fan of the president, to put it mildly. He quipped about the president, "Nixon, new name, same old gas." Ever since, the phrase, "new name, same old gas," has had a particular resonance for me. It is my shorthand for saying that repackaging does not itself change what is being packaged. I use the phrase with a critical nuance to convey the point that evils are not ameliorated by simply changing nomenclature. The point that I want to make, the point that more correctly I need to share with you now, is that the repackaging of the word racism by the phrase replacement theory does not absolve those who espouse it from the sin of being racists. Replacement theory, new name, same old gas. Ask yourself, what is the line that connects the following dots? 16th Street Baptist Church, Birmingham, Alabama, 1963. Neshoba County, Mississippi, 1964. Emmanuel African Methodist Episcopal Church, Charleston, South Carolina, 2015. Tree of Life Synagogue, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, 2018. J.C. Kosher Supermarket, Jersey City, New Jersey, 2019. And now, Tops Grocery Store, Buffalo, 2022. Answer: each of these places and dates represents another racially motivated mass murder in the United States. This is terribly sad. Sadder still, this list could be extended. And again, this list is not comprehensive. Other groups have been victimized in America, starting with the most authentic Americans of them all, the Native Americans. This list purposely focuses two groups of victims of racially motivated mass murder: Jewish Americans and African Americans. My grouping is not merely rhetorical, it is substantive. The same kind of racism that targets Jews also targets African Americans. This is one of the pathologies of American history. Most of the Jewish listeners to this message are descended from ancestors who lived in Central and Eastern Europe and emigrated to the United States in the 19th and early 20th centuries. A generation later, the Jews of Europe were unable to escape the growing menace of Nazism, and the result was genocide. Why were the Jews not welcome in the USA in the 1930s, as their cousins and uncles and aunts had been welcomed in previous decades? Because in 1921 and again in 1924, America shut its gates to immigrants other than white Anglo-Saxon Protestants. There were short-term and long-term reasons for America's betrayal of the promise of the Statue of Liberty with her uplifted lamp and her message of welcome for the oppressed of foreign lands. In the grip of what was then called the Red Scare, Americans were afraid of bringing communists into this country. Demobilized soldiers after World War I were looking to fill the jobs that immigrants would otherwise have taken. But the fundamental reason for the exclusion of Jews was racism. Since the mid-19th century, American nativists defined American as white, Anglo-Saxon, and Protestant. Others, Asians, Catholics, Greek, Russian, and Ukrainian Orthodox, and certainly Jews, were not welcome. Nativists predicted that those people whom they deemed inferior would weaken the so-called American race. Two books published in the years just before Congress passed its anti-immigration Johnson Immigration Bill of 1921 made clear the linkage of fear and hatred of both Jews and blacks. In 1916, an influential Columbia University professor, Madison Grant, published The Passing of the Great Race. 4 years later, Grant wrote the introduction to a book breathing the same poisonous spirit, The Rising Tide of Color. The author of that book was Lothrop Stoddard, a political scientist who served as a consultant to the Ku Klux Klan. Both authors translated their so-called scholarship into action. In 1922, Grant became vice president of the Immigration Restriction League. He furnished the statistics used by Congress to make the bans on Jewish and other non-Protestant immigration in place since 1921 all the more stringent in 1924. For his part, Stoddard went on to serve as a pro-Nazi journalist in Germany in 1939 and 1940. In fact, both men were eager to pal around with top Nazis. Grant died in 1937 just before he could fulfill a personal dream, going on a hunting expedition with Hermann Goering. These two books were much appreciated by Hitler and his subordinates. In January 1933, Hitler told the New York Times that Germany was learning from American models. He called Grant's book his Bible. Anti-Semitic racism in America was pushed to the margins of the political spectrum by the Second World War, but it was not eradicated. As for anti-black racism, those sympathetic to the policies espoused by anti-black racists have adopted the tactic, and it's just a tactic, of avoiding the label racism. In fact, they loudly proclaimed then and still proclaim now that they are not racists. Alternately, they point to the racism of others. And there is indeed racism in many quarters of the American political spectrum. But this ought not serve as a defense for racists from any one sector. It's wrong, it's bad, it's sinful wherever it appears. Both anti-black and anti-Semitic racism in America benefited from a big boost in 2016. In the past half dozen years, their linkage has often been explicit. People who commit racially motivated crimes against either minority explicitly ground their bigotry in a racist ideology that is the linear descendant of the theories of Grant, Stoddard, and company, claiming Nordic supremacy and Semitic and black inferiority. The current verbiage of choice is the Great Replacement theory. The term derives from a French white nationalist author, Renaud Camus. It has flourished on this side of the Atlantic. In 2017, the neo-Nazis marching in Charlottesville and giving the Nazi salute chanted, "You will not replace us," and "Jews will not replace us." Robert Bowers, the murderer of 11 Jewish worshipers at the Tree of Life Synagogue in 2018, chose to attack that synagogue on that day because just then, Tree of Life congregation was honoring the work of HIAS, the Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society. Just before the recent Buffalo mass murder, the alleged shooter, Peyton Gendron, posted a lengthy online message speaking about the crisis of mass immigration, which he characterized as, quote, "an assault on the European people that, if not combated, will ultimately result in the complete racial and cultural replacement of the European people." You can hear proponents of the Great Replacement theory virtually every night on television, reaching millions of viewers via popular opinion channels. You can also hear a growing number of politicians working that into their stump speeches. Great Replacement theory is the term of choice for racists to avoid saying racism. New name, same old gas. And this gas is poison gas, just as Zyklon B was poison gas. It is too late to keep American racism confined to the political margins. Now it must be vigorously ejected from the political mainstream. That will require a painful reckoning. Are we as a nation up to the challenge? I pray that we are. Amen.